Thank you very much. It's great to be back to my school. I can't tell you how many times I've thought about someday, being able to talk to the students here and all the great thoughts I've had about my time and since I've left. And today I'm really excited to talk to you about some new opportunities and some things for you to possibly consider going forward in your life. It's really about the Dubai to Shanghai corridor, the corridor of opportunities. I know I'm an oil guy, but I'm only using oil as a proxy to explain for you, for your minds and for your interests, really the explosive growth that's actually happening in this part of the world. Taking a look at this map I have behind me, we're going to start in Dubai, and that's the red dot all the way over on the right. And that's where I live, and that's where I flew 14 hours to come here and see you, and that's what we're going to talk about. Right there, Dubai sits on the top of the world's largest oil reserves, the easy ones to get to, not like the fracking and everything else. Basically, if you stick your staff in the ground a little too hard, up comes the bubbling crude. It's right there. It's very easy to get to. And this is important because it's low cost. The average Saudi price of crude oil per barrel is $2.50. Some of the fracking that we're doing in the US is around $50. So this is low-cost crude, the largest supply readily available, facing the fastest growing customer dynamic. And that's everything to your right there on the screen, going east towards India and China and Southeast Asia and Korea and Japan. These economies are the ones that are really growing very robustly and quickly. So the crude oil, which is a lifeblood of the economy, is moving east. And what I do is I'm dedicated to the financialization of this market. If you look over onto the red dot in the middle of the US, that's the oil price marker for the United States, which is West Texas Intermediate. At the end of the evening news every night when the guy says oil settled at $62 a barrel, that's the one he's talking about. And that grew up with Houston production and the financing from Wall Street and all of the things that contributed to a growing oil industry. And it terminated in a pricing point, which is that pricing point. Then if you move 10 years forward over to the North Sea and that yellow dot in the middle of Europe, it happened again with a pricing point called Brent crude. Now those two markets do not serve the East Asian market because none of that crude comes in here, and they're volatile because of political events, Greece debt, Vladimir Putin running into Ukraine. All of those factors influence those markets. So now the Asian market needs its own pricing point. And that's what I do. I run a commodity futures exchange that delivers crude oil and prices their factors into the equation so that they can represent their own economic activity. Clearly, this is an important place to do this because Asia continues to grow as a consumer. Right now, they represent about 33% of the demand of energy products. But that's not going to slow down. It's only going to grow. Clearly, with the U.S. not requiring so much imports with our own self-sufficiency in oil, all of it's now steered east. But that's also where the growing economies are. So the potential drivers for demand are still very much there, especially when you look at 2035 and Asia being over 40% of the crude oil market. This is what's contributing to my growth. This is a chart that shows about 33% growth per year of the volumes on my exchange. And that's not only because of the demand, but it's also because of the increasing financialization. In other words, people having access to these types of markets and this type of trading. And it helps them balance out their hedge portfolios and protect themselves from the oil volatility, which everyone knows has been pretty crazy lately. Without these tools, they don't have a way for them to be protected against the oil they need for their airlines and their industries and their refineries. So luckily for me, this has been a good driver for growth. But underlying that story is really the changing market dynamics, that there are more players coming in to use these types of instruments and borrow some of the mechanisms that we have in the West to address their hedging needs. An overview of the corridor. I live in Dubai. This place is crazy. It's amazing. Right there's the Burj Khalifa. It's 828 meters high. That's 2 times bigger than the Empire State Building. That island right there, that's called the Palm. That's a man-made island. So that's like Beverly Hills, where I don't live. It's too expensive. Emirates and Dubai is the largest transportation hub on the planet as of this year. There's over 70 million people coming through there every year, and it overtook Heathrow just at the end of 2014. And within 4 hours, flight radius of Dubai is half the world's population, and with 8 hours is 2/3. So this is an extremely important place to represent and to see this economic activity grow. Well, what's the reason? Population growth. Not only population growth, but the dynamics of what's happening in the market, which is the exponential growth in GDP and also on the personal income. People are earning more money. There's a middle class that's growing by the hundreds of millions. It's staggering to think about that these people are incrementally earning more money, and they're deploying it in many different ways. But it's certainly adding to a large and very quickly growing growth platform, which is exciting because you want to be where markets are growing. And I think all of the Fortune 500 companies are looking at those growing opportunities. Clearly, China is a huge driver, 1.3 billion people with a $9 trillion economy. It's the number 2 economy in the world, and they continue to drive a lot of consumer services and goods, one of which I think you'll know about and we'll talk about, Alibaba. This is an important example because 231 million people came online after this guy, Jack Ma, came to the US in '95 and saw the internet. And he brought it to China. They spent $250 billion on goods and services in 2013. And it was the largest IPO in US history. So this reflects the fact that it's not only one-way traffic, that we're trying to be a part of this rapid consumer growth. And obviously, this example represents an extremely important example of technology also fostering growth. But it's their technology, the way they want to do it, modeled on the experiences that they've seen in the West. This goes to the point of humans being aspirational. Every human being, we know this to be a self-evident truth, wants to do better for their family. They want things, they want food sources, higher protein in their diet. They want medical services so that they can sustain themselves and be healthier, and of course, education. So there's a rapidly growing population, increasing in its GDP, and also needing goods and services. And just to give you a little idea of how big the gap is right now between them and us, the average American consumes 60 barrels of oil per year. The average Chinese consumes 6. There's still a huge amount of growth as a proxy for not only that, but other things. So when we're looking at the corridor, and this is what I want to talk to you about too, what do I see? I can tell you it's not like Wall Street. It operates very differently. Their social norms and their societal differences are extremely important in the way that they do business. And this is why I'm somebody who's interested in being there, because there's so much happening. You have to recognize that you're not on Wall Street anymore. The way you approach it, it has to be different. One of the main reasons is that it's a state capitalist model. If you look at that chart right there, that just shows you the UAE, the percentage of government involvement in the stock market and also industry. It's huge. So when I go see people in the corridor, I'm talking to government officials, crown princes, and their needs and their concerns are very different. They're looking at social stability. They're looking at maintaining incremental growth. And the most fascinating part for me is you have the Chinese on one side who want a low oil price, and then you have the Middle East on the other side that wants a high oil price. So clearly, there's going to be opportunities in there for people and companies to see growth. Right now, for the United States, about 15% of our GDP is exported in goods and services. That's a lot. So all the Fortune 500 companies are looking to set up, IBM, Cisco, the airlines, to try and get a piece of this market. And I think that that's a good place for you to start if you're thinking about a career and what you want to do. And what I want to spend the rest of my time doing is talking about how you become an influencer. Becoming an influencer working in this part of the world is extremely interesting and important because you could be the one that helps these companies sell their goods and services. And you can do that by taking on some of the skills that you find in that region, like the language. Language isn't just translation, it's communication. I speak Chinese, and it helps me go into China and not only understand their cultural interests, but what they're trying to say and what they're trying to get at. Having experience in the corridor. This is one thing I would definitely advise. Go get yourself an internship. Go get yourself an exchange program. Because when I look at resumes, I want to see that people have lived overseas, and they're not going to want to run home to mom as soon as they don't like the food or something they don't like the neighborhood they're living in. It's really important to invest in and the knowledge that you need, especially from the business side and the cultural side. And what you find is, when you do this, you become the influencer. When I go to Chicago and I talk about China, they know I speak Chinese. They know I just came from Beijing. They listen to me. And it helps you punch above your weight and move your career faster by taking on this differentiation between you and other people who are graduating from school. One of the things I do all the time is when I see my clients, I give them the best idea I have. I tell them what their competitors are doing. I tell them the new things that we're looking at in the market, even if I don't have them to sell yet, because they took the time to meet with you. And you need to use that time wisely by giving them an impression that you're always going to bring them the best ideas. I was in Malaysia 2 weeks ago talking to the Malaysian government. I'll be in Beijing next week. And they always make time to see me because they know I'm going to bring them the best idea I have. And sometimes people say, just sell them the not so interesting stuff and let them work their way up. No way. This is a competitive market. They do understand what the best ideas are, and it's better for you to be building your relationship and developing your value proposition with them. And relationship, okay, I've heard Oprah mentioned a lot of times today. It's not that kind of relationship. It takes years to build solid foundations of business in this region. And what I do is I use the 90-10 rule when I'm pitching them and talking about business. So 90% of it is about business, 10% of it is about, boy, it's really great to be here. I noticed that you guys are really developing your downtown area. I love coming here. I love the food. Talking to them about what's interesting. And then you make yourself human and identifiable, and they start to want to talk to you. And then always I try to get an opportunity to have social time. Time for a coffee, time for a tea. People like to have an exchange over that kind of, very relaxed time. And you shouldn't be pitching the whole time. You have to let it go and just build your relationship with them. And when you do, you have these relationships for years. And it helps you, again, become the influencer that you want to be. The last thing, and this is second to last thing, is really important, is keep educating yourself. I still study Chinese 3 or 4 hours a week because it's like playing the cello. If you put it aside for a while, it's just going to be really hard to pick up again. And it helps keep me fresh about what's happening in the markets, and it allows me to elevate my level of conversation every time I go back and I see them. And it helps me also when I'm translating my ideas and my thoughts back to my U.S. company and telling them about what I'm seeing. And I think that's one of the key things, is that a lot of people I see who aren't successful because they gave up. They wanted to sit in their cubicle and write it out. You've got to continue to build your value proposition and keep educating yourself. The last thing is that, when you're there and you're in amongst those cultures that have been around for 6,000 years, and you're talking to the people in these markets, amongst these billions of people, you just might find something of yourself. This is my name in Chinese, Ke Rei Ci, and that's my name in Arabic, Christopher Fix. And those are the business cards that I carry. And there's a lot of that culture that comes back to me and helps me see the world in a different way. And I'm hoping that some of you might take the same path and start thinking about looking outside the U.S., because we have lots of people depending upon jobs in this country for goods and services that we're selling overseas. And these markets really need you. Thank you very much.